Thank you very much, Eduarda. Struggled a little bit there with technology, but I think we are good to go.
Yes, please.
Are we audible to everybody?
Yes, very good, very well.
All right. Thank you very much. I would just like to indicate before I start with the presentation that I am with my colleagues, my two colleagues, Professor Blaki and Mr. Mutari. So they will be coming in when we start getting into the discussions, but I'll just run through the presentation very quickly.
Thank you.
For those colleagues around the world who may not have full information about Lesotho, just a quick country background. We are a democratic kingdom and situated in the southern African part of the African continent. And Lesotho has 2.2 million inhabitants. And generally, all the people speak one language, and we are called Basotho. And Lesotho is a member of the Southern African Development Community and African Union, and of course the United Nations as well, and many other multilateral bodies out there. But Sadaq becomes important in this regard because it is the one that that has provided most guidance to ourselves within the region in relation to the qualifications framework that we are presenting today. And in terms of the education system, so that people at least have a sense of the education system that is in which the qualifications framework is being implemented. We have primary and secondary, and that is termed basic education. And then from there we have tertiary education, which comprises technical and vocational education together with university education. Then we have, in terms of the basic education landscape, we have public schools, and we have church-owned schools that are supported by government. Basically, government supports church-based or church-owned schools because it sees them as part of the initiative towards providing the service throughout the country, because public schools in themselves would not be sufficient to provide access. So this is why there's that arrangement for government to support church-owned schools. And then we have purely private schools that do not receive any form of support from government. Then from there, there's one national university, the National University of Lesotho, and two private universities, and the number of colleges that is at the tertiary level. Moving on into the structures that support education in the country, we have the Ministry of Education and Training, which is at the apex, in charge of all affairs related to education. Then we have an agency within the ministry that focuses specifically on curriculum development or basic education. And then we have inspectorate looking at issues of quality assurance in relation to basic education. And then we have the Examinations Council of Lesotho, which is responsible for examinations for basic education. And then the Technical and Vocational Department. This is a department within the Ministry of Education, but its responsibility is on technical and vocational education and training. And then from there, we have the Council on Higher Education, from where I'm speaking, which is primarily or initially just responsible for quality assurance in higher education. And its mandate has recently been extended to now deal with issues of managing implementation of the Lesotho Qualifications Framework. Yeah, so brief historical background would be that the first time Lesotho developed a qualifications framework was in 2005, but for a number of reasons, that qualifications framework was not fully implemented, and government decided later on that it would not be prudent to implement the framework in the form in which it was. The framework was proposing a number of structures to manage the qualifications framework. For instance, there was an agency that would just be dealing with qualifications separately as an authority. And government felt that given the small size of the country and the small size of the education sector, it would not be sustainable and best use of resources to have many agencies implementing the qualifications framework, whereas the size of the country and the size of the sector is fairly small. So for those and a number of other reasons, that's why the 205 qualifications framework was not fully implemented. And but work had to be done. The work that related to qualifications had to be done, and it was done on an ad hoc basis by various agencies dealing with areas that are relevant to their work. So revision of the 205 qualification framework started in 2016, and it went through a highly consultative process. We noted a question that was raised in your presentation, Eduardo, that about how long it takes. Of course, you would have different answers to that question. It depends on a range of stakeholders, the size of the country, the size of the sector, and so on and so forth. But I think what we can say is that it is important that that process is consultative. Yes. Because the framework, then that way everybody should feel that they've had a say in the development of the framework, and they will equally have a share in its implementation. And the fact that it's one policy area that affects many aspects of people's lives, either within organizations, as individuals, and so on and so forth. So the revised framework was approved by Cabinet in June 2019. That was quite a milestone for us as a country, given where we've come from, as you can see, from 2005, without having a fully implemented qualifications framework. And because also a qualifications framework is a bedrock for quality assurance. We were quality assuring without a proper foundation laid. This is why it was such a huge milestone to get to June 2019. And it was then launched after that. And I will not go into the details of that, but just that talks to how important this particular policy document is to us as a country. It is getting into the framework itself now. It is an integrated 10-level qualifications framework. And we also are aligned to the Sadaq qualifications framework as we were revising the framework, we were very cognizant of the need to align to the Sadaq qualifications framework. Of course, Sadaq has a much more rigorous and detailed exercise that Lesotho is part of to ensure full alignment, but we can comfortably and confidently say that this qualifications framework was developed in line with the Sadaq qualifications framework. It covers basic education, technical, vocational education, higher education, and professional development awards. Moving very quickly, the objectives of the framework are to integrate existing sector frameworks into a single framework, also to remove barriers between institutions and other subsectors for improving learner progression. It also intends to uphold equity and redress, enabling citizens to acquire qualifications irrespective of age and lack of formal qualifications. So issues of recognition of prior learning and a number of issues come very strongly within this qualifications framework to improve articulation and learner mobility through links and pathways between various components of the qualification. For instance, there's quite a lot of wastage within the system, within our system, since the qualifications framework is new, and we now hope it will help us deal with some of these issues that emerge as a result of lack of articulation. For instance, you might find somebody starting at the certificate level, going to a college to do a certificate, and then do a diploma, and then get to a bachelor's degree, still going full duration. If a certificate takes 2 years, they will take 2 years, diploma takes 3 years, they take 3 years, bachelor's degree takes 4 years. So you see, just to obtain a bachelor's degree, a person has spent, a long time within the education sector and wasted a lot of resources in the process. That's just an illustration of the kind of wastage that we would have within the system with poor articulation. And now, to foster quality and relevance through outcomes and standard-based education, and also to acknowledge and value diversity and worth of all qualifications as they serve identified purposes, and to facilitate curriculum innovation and qualifications renewal, and also upgrading technical and vocational education qualifications to higher levels. Currently, in practice, we have our TVET qualifications only going up to a diploma, but the qualifications framework upgrades them all the way to the PhD level, which this objective talks to. And then to ensure consistency in terms of the qualification verification and articulation processes of all awards. So these are the objectives of the qualifications framework. What is the Lesotho qualifications framework exactly? It is a coherent and integrated framework. Like we indicated, it is integrated for all qualifications in Lesotho. And as indicated earlier, it is consistent with other country frameworks and is in line and aligned to the Sadaq qualifications framework. It allows comparison of qualifications and mobility of learners. How qualifications are compared with our qualification framework, they are compared by level of complexity using the 10-level descriptors that look at issues such as knowledge, skills, and competencies, and also by volume of learning using a credit system where 1 credit is equals to 10 notional learning activity. The qualifications included on the framework, we have all certificates, all diplomas, and all degrees, higher education, technical and vocational, general education, including professional development awards, and adult education. So we'll perhaps spend a few minutes on the summary framework just to take the webinar through the framework. The 10 level, as in, maybe just talk to the graphic besides the table. The graphic besides the table just illustrates certificates in purple, indicating that from the lowest level up to level 8, we offer the framework does provide for certificates, can be certificates and then postgraduate certificates. And then you have professional development awards from level 6 in the red bar, from level 6 up to level 10. Then we have diplomas from level 6 up to level 8. And then we have degrees, degrees from level 7 to level 10. Then we have come into the matrix itself. We have academic/professional track, basically starting at the bottom with primary certificates, junior certificate, and also technical education certificate. We'll talk to the sub track, just focusing on the main track, and then you go to level 4 O level / Lesotho qualification. I mean Lesotho General Certificate of School Living, certificate LGCSE, and advanced standing standard certificate, diploma, bachelor's, and so on. Then there's the sub track. The sub track under academic and professional track basically focuses on the technical education, but happening within the education, the mainstream education. So that is the technical education. For instance, in a school, you would have students that would be focusing more on the academic line, and those that would be focusing on the technical line. So the sub-track within that track just illustrates that we have within our system those two, so that students can have the flexibility. Students can have the flexibility within these two sub-tracks up to level 5 to move from one space to another. There are some common subjects that they do together. There are those that they wouldn't be doing together. Then moving to the TVET track. The TVET track has both formal, professional, and industry-based qualifications. Like we indicated, currently in practice, the TVET track only goes up to level 6 at the diploma level, but the qualifications framework has opened that up such that the qualifications can go to up to level 10. But there's a sub-track. There are two sub-tracks just below level 6 there. Basically what those mean is that the first sub-track is the education that happens within the institutions for where one goes to school to obtain a qualification. Then the sub-track within that is for recognition of prior learning, where then they will go through trade tests. This is why trade test A, trade test B, and so on and so forth. Then from there, it goes all the way from diploma or all the way to the bachelor's degree. Then we have credit values on the two last columns. If we can just come back very briefly to talk about the academic and professional track, just to indicate that professional track, professional development awards are included in this track, even though they may not necessarily be specified. We could not specify them because we didn't find terms that we could use that would generalize, you know, various levels, like you have a diploma, you have a bachelor's, and so on and so forth. But for professional track, because you would have professionals in engineering, in health, in accountancy, and so on and so forth, we couldn't find terms that would generalize those, but nonetheless, they are included in that track. So basically, that is the quick summary of the Lesotho qualifications framework. Moving on. Now, with regard to the credit system, we noted that the credit system provides flexibility and mobility in learner pathways through the various platforms such as credit accumulation and transfer. We noted, and the framework acknowledges the importance of mobility of learners and flexibility such that they can be able to carry their credits and have them recognized either within the same institution in a different qualification, or in a different institution, or even in a different country. And also issues of recognition of prior learning are quite critical and heavily embedded within the framework. Recognition of current competencies and work integrated, issues of work integrated learning. And looking at issues of how the complexity of a qualification is specified within the Lesotho qualifications framework. We have all qualifications on the LQF specifying learning outcomes appropriate to the level, descriptor and specific to the qualification. So issues of learning outcomes and level descriptors are quite important and critical to this. And also, learning outcomes also describe what a learner is able to demonstrate on successful completion of the qualification in terms of the key categories of the level descriptors, which are knowledge, skills, and competencies. And learner's performance is assessed against the learning outcomes, basically indicating that assessment ultimately is based on the learning outcomes, when the learning outcomes themselves are informed by the level descriptors. How is the volume of qualifications specified? All qualifications are assigned a credit value indicating the level of learning. And as indicated earlier, 1 credit is equals to 10 notional hours of learning activity for an average learner. It's important that the qualifications framework looks at an average learner so that then it can be able to carry everybody without focusing on the fast-paced learners, in which case the rest of the learners would be left behind. Therefore, credit is a notional value and includes all activities related to learning, class time, lectures, project work, laboratory work, and so on and so forth. So that is what is included in that. Now, the Lesotho Qualifications Framework has a very detailed presentation of the level descriptors. We may not go through that detailed account, but those who would be interested in having a closer look at the level descriptors can visit the CHE website. They will be able to access a comprehensive matrix that presents the level descriptors. But the level descriptors are quite critical as a design feature of our framework because they provide the guidance that is required for those, for developers of qualifications, and also for evaluation of qualifications for us to, and also for registration for institutions when they register qualifications on the framework. This is the component of the framework that we look at and we apply. And the LQF notions of depth operate on a continuum from general to specified, issues of breadth and kinds of knowledge and complexity. And the level descriptors are structured as follows. Levels, of course, we indicated ours is a 10-level qualifications framework. And then the generic statement and the credit value, areas of knowledge and nature of skills, of course, agency and context. But as indicated, for those who want to get a good sense of exactly what the level descriptors entail, then can visit and can access the full document on the CHE website. Alignment with the Sadaq Regional Qualifications Framework. We indicated that the qualifications framework was revised. We ensured that it is fully aligned to the regional qualifications framework. But in addition to that, in addition to ensuring as we were working on it, now Sadaq has a project where all its member states are required to align their qualifications framework to the Sadaq qualifications framework. And there's a process to be followed. There's a very specific process to be followed in that regard. This will lead to Sadaq then being able to declare all qualifications from all member states to be at a particular level. And that is a very important project for all of us within the Sadaq region, because it will enhance the mobility that our various qualifications frameworks do advocate. For instance, the vision is that once all qualifications are fully aligned and Sadaq has satisfied itself that qualifications are aligned, then when learners graduate from our institutions, their certificate will indicate that this qualification is at this particular level of the National Qualifications Framework, and it is on this particular, which is aligned to the Sadaq Qualifications Framework at this particular level. So when a learner leaves, or a professional who would have graduated from Lesotho, for instance, leaves Lesotho, goes to Angola, either looking for employment or to further their studies, or goes to Tanzania, or anywhere, South Africa, Zambia, then when they produce their certificate, then they can easily see that, oh, okay, this person holds a qualification that is a level 8 qualification, and which qualification from the qualifications framework that is aligned to the Sadaq qualifications framework at the same level. Then that will make things a lot easier for our learners and our professionals. So we continue to work towards that alignment, so that colleagues are not confused when we say that our qualifications framework is aligned to Sadaq, but we still are working on a process for further alignment. So that's basically what it means, that much as we developed our qualifications framework in line with the Sadaq and making sure that it is aligned, but Sadaq has a process for member states to follow. It includes looking at issues of systems, issues of quality assurance within various countries, and so on and so forth. And we regard that as a very important project that will be able to enhance mobility of our professionals and our learners. Now, what are the implementation arrangements? Implementation arrangements, we have the policy document that talks to the qualifications framework, provides for an agency that will run the qualifications framework. And that agency is the Lesotho Qualifications and Quality Council. As I indicated earlier, that we could not fully implement the qualifications framework that had been developed previously, because it's provided for a number of agencies that were separate and dealing with separate areas within the various tiers of education. And that was seen not to be the best model for us. And now this is why we've come up with this model. Basically, this body will run the whole of the qualifications framework because it is an integrated framework and it is yet to be established. And while we're working on the establishment of this body, then the Council on Higher Education will implement the qualifications framework, basically dealing with issues of verification, registration of national qualifications, and evaluation of foreign qualifications. So this is just a snapshot of the Lesotho Qualifications Quality and Quality Council. We have the Minister of Education and Training at the top, and then we would have that agency. That agency will be quasi, will be independent in a way, in that it will be a parastatal. Parastatal basically meaning it is a government enterprise, but that is allowed to run its own affairs. So it will not necessarily be a department of government. And these are in the yellow boxes. Those are the basic areas that the body will be looking at. You'll have issues of policy research and issues of finance and corporate. So support kind of functions. And then the core functions will be looking at higher education qualifications. This is why then the Council on Higher Education, its mandate will be subsumed under this body, under the very same business unit we're looking at, the higher education qualifications and quality assurance. Then we'll have another business unit looking at technical and vocational qualifications and quality related to that, and then issues of basic education. So this is the shape and form this body will take, but as indicated, it has yet to be established. We only are starting to work on the supporting legislation that will ultimately lead to the establishment of this body. Now the legislative and regulatory framework. So basically this we see as some of the main functions that will be performed by the LQQC once it comes into the qualifications framework, architecture and maintenance, and development of level and qualifications descriptors. Right now we have global qualifications level descriptors. And so the qualifications descriptors at cascading from the main ones then will be developed at that level. Registration and validation of qualifications and part qualifications and development of standards and issues of evaluation and so on and so forth. So we see this list as some of the main issues that then will be performed, will form the regulatory framework and will be performed by the Lesotho Qualifications and Quality Council. Now, towards the end, and this is the last slide, maybe before we come to the last slide, just to say that this, Madam Chair and colleagues, is a quick snapshot of the Lesotho Qualifications Framework, and we hope it does provide some indication of the road we've traveled to get here and what is contained within the framework itself, and that perhaps will be helpful to somebody working on their own frameworks in whatever form or shape. And we also thought we could spend a minute in this presentation looking at the Covid-19. Education in the era of Covid-19, it's been quite a struggle for us here in Lesotho, as we believe it has been for a number of other countries. Mostly our institutions are face-to-face in terms of their approach. And therefore, when we were hit by COVID-19, we undertook a quick rapid assessment just to check how institutions were coping, because we were under lockdown, but somehow the academic year and academic program had to continue. So we then noted that institutions are forced to use blended learning, employing a variety of educational platforms. And it's important to note that institutions were not necessarily ready and prepared for this, because it all hit us by surprise. A ton of bricks coming down, and the majority of higher education institutions lack the requisite infrastructure to access data, because this was not necessarily their way of looking at this. And therefore, what we did at the Council on Higher Education was to engage with the authorities, the communications authority, to meet institutions halfway by zero rating certain education platforms, so that access to learning could be for all students. And we currently do not have standards for online learning. We're in the process of developing our own ODL standards and blended learning, but we were hit by this thing before they could be finalized and implemented. And no higher education has been assessed for its capacity to use blended learning, but institutions, of course, they make do with what is available. And what we are doing is asking institutions to use the Sadaq ODL and quality assurance guidelines that were developed with the support of the Commonwealth of Learning, such that there is no vacuum and work still continue. And it is not clear how the institutions will maintain quality or provision of higher education upon reopening. So I think, in a nutshell, we're still struggling with coping under COVID, and being able to still make progress in delivering education and in ensuring that access is not hindered, number one. Number two, issues of quality, and also ensuring that quality, of course, will be affected, but that is not badly affected to the extent that we may not be happy with the outcome. So, Madam Chair and colleagues, in Sesotho we say "Homo," which means thank you very much, and you obviously would be familiar with the thank you. And in East Africa they would say "Asante sana." Thank you very much.